Well, howdy, kids. How are we? Yeehaw! So, sorry we gotta do it this way, but I've got a really great passage to read about Devil's Den, and this is the best I can do because the wind has picked up, and I've got to get cracking because I'm gonna see if I can get through 6 pages. I'll show you the book at the end. It's you're familiar with it. As the battle lines of Hood's division advanced towards the far left flank of the Federal line with flags flying, Captain James E. Smith of the 4th Independent Battery of New York Light Artillery watched them approach. Smith commanded a battery of long-range Parrott-rifled artillery posted on and around the corner southern end of Houck's Ridge, a rise of ground on the north side of Devil's Den. Heading straight for Smith's guns were part of 2 brigades of Hood's division, soldiers from Texas and Arkansas under Brigadier General Jerome Robertson and Georgia troops under Brigadier General Henry Benning, as I've gone over. As the Confederates advanced, Smith's New Yorkers opened a furious artillery fire. It tore huge gaps in the ranks of Gray and Butternut, but they dressed their lines, filled in the gaps, and continued advancing. "Give them shell! Give them shot!" Smith yelled to his gun crews. "Damn them, give them anything!" The Southerners took their losses. Horrible losses, and kept coming. As they neared Smith's artillery, his gun crews were running low on ammunition. Desperate, Smith turned toward the line of Federal infantry supporting his battery and yelled, "For God's sake, men, don't let them take my guns away from me!" Closest was the 124th New York Infantry, troops from Sickles' 3rd Corps, who of course advanced and formed the salient, who hailed from New York's Orange County and dubbed themselves the Orange Blossoms. They were commanded by Colonel Augustus Van Horn Ellis, a tough, profane New Yorker who had given up a law practice before the war to seek adventure in California and on the high seas. Now he had more adventure than he could possibly want as Hood's Confederates swarmed up the rise towards his position. To rally his troops, Ellis had his horse brought forward, climbed in the saddle over the protests of another officer who knew it would make him a conspicuous target. Ellis insisted. "The men must see us today," he proclaimed. Ellis and his Orange Blossoms fought fiercely, one point turning back the oncoming Confederates with a bayonet charge. In the end, the Southerners would take Devil's Den and the high ground beside it, as well as 3 of Smith's precious Parrotts, but nothing more. The Orange Blossoms would help preserve the Federal left flank, although not without great loss of blood. Of the 279 officers and troops who held the line, 90 became casualties that afternoon. Among the wounded was Ellis's second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel Francis M. Cummins. Among the dead was another chief subordinate, Major James Cromwell, and Colonel Ellis, who was shot from the saddle in the heat of battle. Captain Charles Wygant, a survivor of that harrowing afternoon, would later describe the desperate, bloody defense waged by Colonel Ellis and his Orange Blossoms. About 3 p.m., a dozen Confederate batteries opened upon us in the most furious manner, and Smith's guns in our rear, and a number of Federal batteries in the vicinity, forthwith began to reply. Presently, long, solid lines of infantry appeared advancing directly against us. At length, the enemy appeared in heavy columns of battalion advancing on us from opposite slope. As we held the position by a single line of battle unsupported, the enemy's superiority in numbers, as seen at a glance, seemed overwhelming. As they approached, they deployed in 4 distinct lines of battle, came resolutely under a rapid fire from our batteries. All seemed lost, but in the steady lines of the 3rd Corps, not a man flinched, and among them all, none were more ready for the fierce encounter than Major Cromwell. When the enemy's advanced line drew near the base of the hill we were on, it appeared to almost halt for a minute, and then started rapidly forward again, and with fierce yells began ascending the slope. There was heard an opening crash of riflery all along our front, which was the death knell of hundreds. Yet on they came, but very slowly, only a few feet at a time. Now Cromwell hurries to Colonel Ellis, who stands behind the color company, and asks him to order a charge, but the colonel shakes his head and tells the major to go back to his place again. Now the enemy has been brought to a stand, but he is only a few rods away. Again Cromwell walks towards Ellis. This time he is accompanied by Adjutant Ramsdell. Once more he requests the colonel to charge and is again told to go back to the left of the regiment. Yet a moment later, their horses brought up, and they mount. The major's only reply is, "The men must see us today," and he rides, I think they meant colonel. "The men must see us today," and he rides slowly to and wheels his horse about in the rear center of the left wing, where with drawn sword and eyes fixed on the colonel, he impatiently awaits his superior's pleasure. Presently Ellis, by a simple nod, gives the desired permission, at which Cromwell waves his sword twice above his head, makes a lunge forward, shouts a charge, and putting spurs to his horse, dashes forward through the front lines. The men cease firing for a minute and with ready bayonets rush after him. Ellis sits in his saddle and looks on as if in proud admiration of both his loved major and gallant sons of Orange until the regiment is fairly underway and then rushes with them into the thickest of the fray. The conflict at this point defies description. Roaring cannon, crashing riflery, screeching shots, bursting shells, hissing bullets, cheers, shouts, shrieks, and groans were the notes of the song of death, which greeted the grim reaper as with mighty sweeps he leveled down the richest field of scarlet human grain ever garnered on this continent. The enemy's line, unable to withstand our fierce onset, broke and fled, and Cromwell, his noble face flushed with victory, and his extended right arm, waving his flashing saber, uttered a shout of triumph. But it had barely escaped his lips when the second line of the foe poured into us with a terrible fire, which seemed in an instant to bring down a full quarter of our number. Once more we hear our beloved Cromwell shout, and once again we see amid the fire and smoke his noble form and flashing blade, but the next instant his brave heart is pierced by a rebel bullet. His right arm drops powerless, his lifeless body falls backward from the saddle, and loud above the din of battle we hear Ellis shout, my God, men, your major's down! Save him! Save him!" Again the onset of Orange County sons becomes irresistible, and the second line of the foe wavers and falls back, but another solid line takes its place, whose fresh fire falls with frightful effect now on our skeleton ranks. So terrible it is that 2/3 of the artillerymen in our rear are either killed or wounded, and the battalion and the balance driven from their guns by the shells and bullets which pass over and through our line. I'm going to skip about a page, pardon me, so I'm going to skip page 194. But the gallant boys fought on. If there were any cowards in our ranks when the battle began, they were not there then. Every few moments a man would drop a rifle which had become clogged or so hot he could not hold it steadily, and bidding those beside him, careful where they fired, rush forward to pick it up, in place of it, one that had fallen from the hands of a dead or wounded comrade. Presently the foes in our front slackened their fire, and turning for a moment to view the bodies of our late leaders, I saw the brains protruding from a small round hole in Ellis's forehead, and discovered glistening on Cromwell's blood-stained breast a gold locket, which I knew contained the portrait of one who but for a few moments before was his beloved young wife, but then alas, though she suspected it not, his widow. As I wheeled about towards the regiment, I heard some of ahead of me say, "They are advancing," and glancing to the left saw that the 40th New York was retiring before a heavy battle line, and that the column of the foe had already moved past their flank. The 99th Pennsylvania too was giving ground. The next instant an aide rode up, Captain Cooney I think it was, with orders to fall back without a moment's delay. As soon as I could get these men together, I started after them with the regiment, which was now some distance away, but the enemy had in the meantime advanced to the top ledge our regiment had occupied, and it was by mere chance that we escaped capture. The active part that the 124th was to play in this great 3 days battle had now been performed. Moving to a piece of woods about a mile in the rear of the Union battle line, we prepared, and with saddened hearts and gloomy thoughts, quietly partook of our evening meal. The men must see us today. God, I love that line. Words really can't describe that kind of bravery. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. All of us would, of course, like to think that if we were in those shoes, we would have been just as brave. But the truth is, a small number of us may have been, and many of us may not have been. By the way, Army of the Potomac, just for those of you who think that I'm some kind of alt-righter, just because I give credit where credit is due and cover a few Confederate monuments, you've got it all wrong. If you're just following in, let it be known that I try to look at this battle and this war as objectively as possible. Sometimes I give credit to the Union. Sometimes I give credit to the Confederates. I see many examples of immense bravery and other attributes in both. Anyhow, guys, sorry I had to do that for my car, but the wind had picked up. Of course, again, we are at the top of Houck's Ridge, looking above Devil's Den and Little Round Top off yonder. And I'm at 10 minutes, guys, so I'll see you on the next one. Later.